Ma'am, step away from there.
This is my garden. Why would I step away?
I said put the tools down, now.
Young man, I live here. I'm planting flowers.
What exactly is the problem? You're refusing to follow lawful
I'm
instructions.
asking for a reason. This is my home.
All right, that's it. Get on the ground.
It was 9:47 on a Tuesday morning in suburban Atlanta, Georgia, when Officer Kenneth Chapman made a decision so reckless, so completely indefensible, that it would end his career in law enforcement before he was old enough to rent a car without a surcharge. The elderly woman kneeling in the front garden wasn't committing a crime. She wasn't trespassing. She wasn't suspicious. She was retired Judge Erica Pierce, a 74-year-old black woman who had served on the Fulton County Superior Court for 33 years before retiring, a woman who had presided over thousands of cases and commanded the respect of every courtroom she had ever entered. She was planting petunias in her own front yard. What happened in the next several minutes would cost Officer Kenneth Chapman everything, cost the city of Atlanta $750,000, and produce one of the most watched police misconduct videos in the history of the internet. Because Kenneth's own body camera recorded every single second of it. Before we get into the story, and I promise you it is one of the most infuriating things you will ever watch. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city in the comments below and hit that subscribe button, because what you are about to see is so outrageous, so absurd, and so important that you need to stay for all of it. Trust me on this one. Erica Pierce had lived in her brick colonial home in the Cascade Heights neighborhood of Atlanta for 38 years. She and her late husband Raymond had chosen it together in 1987. Raymond had insisted on the neighborhood, loved the wide tree-lined streets and the front porches, and told Erica the garden space out front was made for her. Raymond passed away 6 years ago. Erica lived alone now, though her daughter Simone visited every Sunday without fail and always paused at the front path to admire whatever was blooming. That particular Tuesday, she was planting petunias, soft pinks and deep violets, from her regular nursery 2 days before. She was wearing her favorite teal-green shirt, blue jeans, and her worn gardening gloves, the one Simone had given her 3 Christmases ago that she refused to replace. Her small trowel and a watering can sat on the path beside her. She pressed a petunia into the soil, patted the earth around it, and reached for the next one. Kenneth Chapman was 24 years old with 8 months on the Atlanta Police Department. He had wanted to be a police officer since he was 16. He had grown up in Marietta, 30 miles north of Atlanta, in a subdivision where the streets had names like Millbrook Crossing and Heritage Trace. He had never lived in a neighborhood like Cascade Heights. He had never spent real time in one. That gap in his experience was not something anyone in his training had asked him to think about. He was running a routine patrol through Cascade Heights on a Tuesday morning when he saw her. An elderly black woman kneeling in the front garden of a well-maintained brick colonial. Gardening gloves, a trowel, a flat of flowers on the path beside her, the silver sedan in the driveway, the quiet, tree-lined street. Something felt wrong. He would never find a satisfactory answer because there wasn't one. There was only an assumption so deeply embedded he could not locate it, could not hold it up and examine it, could not see it for what it was. He slowed the cruiser. He pulled to the curb. He turned off the engine and opened the door. His hand drifted to his weapon. Not a decision, just a reflex, as his boots touched the pavement of her driveway. Legal reality check. Reasonable suspicion. The rule: before an officer can legally stop or question you, they need reasonable suspicion. A specific, articulable fact that a crime is occurring. Not a feeling, not a hunch, a fact. The red flag: Kenneth had no fact. An elderly woman gardening in front of a well-kept home in an affluent neighborhood is not suspicious behavior. It is Tuesday morning. Suspicion based on race and perceived misfit is not a legal standard. It is bias. The consequence: any stop, detention, or search that flows from that moment is legally poisoned at the root. Everything that followed was built on nothing. Was there any reasonable basis to stop this woman? Let us know in the comments. Erica heard the footsteps on the path before she saw him. She looked up from the garden bed, squinting against the morning light, and found a uniformed officer standing at the edge of her front walk. Young, very young, his hand resting at his hip in a way that was clearly practiced. She sat back on her heels, genuinely confused. Erica, good morning. He did not return the greeting. Kenneth, ma'am, step away from the property and put the tools down. Erica looked at the trowel in her gloved hand. She looked back at him. She set the trowel down slowly, not because she felt she had to, but because she was a woman who had spent 33 years maintaining her composure in rooms designed to test it. She rose to her feet, unhurried, her garden gloves still on her hands. Erica, officer, I am planting flowers. This is my home. Kenneth, I need you to step away from the garden and produce identification. Her confusion sharpened into something more alert. Erica, my identification is inside the house. I am happy to go and retrieve it. My name is Erica Pierce. I own this property. I have lived here for 38 years. Kenneth, I need to see ID now, not inside. Now, her voice was measured, precise, the voice of someone who had silenced courtrooms with it. Erica, young man, I have just told you my name and my address and that I own this home. On what basis are you speaking to me this way? He could not answer. He filled the silence the only way he knew how. Kenneth, you're refusing to cooperate with a lawful order. Erica, I am asking you to explain yourself. That is not the same thing. His hand came off his hip and moved toward her arm. Legal reality check. Unlawful detention and authority inflation. The rule. Demanding ID from someone on their own property, without any crime being committed, is not a lawful order. In most states, you are not legally required to provide ID simply because an officer asks. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable seizures, and that includes being stopped or detained without justification. The red flag. Kenneth used command language, step away, put the tools down, produce identification, to create the appearance of legal authority where none existed. This is called authority inflation, using the costume and voice of the law to manufacture compliance that the law does not actually require. The consequence. Any person who is detained based on fabricated authority has been illegally seized. That is a constitutional violation, and it is a civil rights claim. Was this a lawful order or an illegal demand? Let us know in the comments. Jury checkpoint. What the officer claimed. She refused to cooperate with his commands. What the law requires. She had no legal obligation to produce ID on her own property during a non-consensual stop with no probable cause. Asking an officer to explain themselves is a constitutional right, not obstruction. You decide. Was Erica's request for an explanation cooperation or resistance? Let us know in the comments. Deshaun Okafor had been on his front porch for less than a minute, coffee in hand, watching the morning settle over Ardmore Lane, when he heard the voices. He knew Erica Pierce the way you know someone after 20 years of living across the street from them. He set his coffee down on the porch railing and reached for his phone. Down the block, Marcia Ellison heard it through her kitchen window. She stepped to her front door, understood immediately what she was seeing, went back inside for her phone, came back out in under 10 seconds, and was already recording when she reached the edge of her yard. Walter Tate called out from his yard, loud enough to carry. Walter, officer, that's Judge Pierce. She's lived on this block longer than most of us. Kenneth didn't look at him. He didn't look at any of them. He grabbed Erica's arm and pressed her forward, toward her own porch steps. Erica's shoulder hit the brick and she gasped, sharp and involuntary, and then steadied herself because steadying herself was what she did. The handcuffs came out. Kenneth secured one wrist and then the other, the metal closing over her gardening gloves, over the gloves Simone had given her, over the hands that had just been pressing petunias into the soil of her own front garden. For cameras were recording now, for angles on the same thing. Erica's voice, when she spoke, was not loud. It did not need to be. Erica, you will regret this. Legal reality check. False arrest. The rule. A lawful arrest requires probable cause, a reasonable belief, based on actual evidence, that a specific crime has been committed. No crime had been committed here. No evidence existed. No complaint had been filed. An officer cannot manufacture an arrest by escalating a fabricated stop into a use of force. The red flag. Grabbing a person's arm, pushing them against a structure. and placing them in handcuffs without legal justification is a false arrest. It is also assault. The Fourth Amendment was written for exactly this moment, to protect citizens from officers who act as judge and jury on the sidewalk. The consequence: a false arrest exposes the officer to criminal charges, the department to civil liability, and the city to a settlement that comes directly out of the public treasury. This one cost $750,000. Was there any legal basis for these handcuffs? Let us know in the comments. Jury checkpoint. What the officer claimed: she was failing to comply with a lawful investigation. What the law requires: no crime was reported, no crime was observed, no evidence existed. Handcuffing a person on their own property without probable cause is a false arrest under both Georgia and federal law. You decide, policing or profiling. Drop your verdict in the comments. Came in pieces the way bad realizations always do. Deshaun first, from across the street, his voice carrying hard over the quiet of the morning. Deshaun, that's Judge Pierce. That is Judge Erica Pierce. Then Walter, from his yard, slower but just as certain. Walter, she's a judge, son. A judge. And then Marcia, close now, close enough that Kenneth couldn't pretend not to hear it, her voice shaking with a fury she was working to control. Marcia, Kenneth, that is retired Judge Erica Pierce. She sentenced cases in this county for 33 years. Kenneth went still. 1 second. The machinery of his certainty simply ceased. He looked at the house. Really looked at it. Brick colonial. Black shutters. Immaculate. The kind of home that spoke not of recent money but of long settled ownership. Of someone who had lived somewhere long enough to make it completely and permanently theirs. He looked at Erica's hands. Still in her gloves. The gardening gloves. Pale green with wear at the fingertips. Now pinned beneath the handcuffs he had just fastened. The silence lasted only a few seconds. Felt much longer. He reached forward and loosened the cuffs. His hands were not entirely steady. He stepped back. When he spoke, his voice had lost everything that had been in it 60 seconds ago. Kenneth, I apologize for the misunderstanding. Erica turned to face him. She looked at him the way she had looked at people in her courtroom for 33 years, with complete, unsparing clarity. Erica, remove the handcuffs from my hands, and then get off my property. There was nothing left for him to say. He removed them. He only stopped because he found out she was a judge. Coincidence or targeting? Legal reality check. Selective enforcement and equal protection. The rule. The 14th Amendment guarantees equal protection under the law. That means an officer cannot treat citizens differently based on race. It is illegal to apply police authority selectively, stopping, questioning, or detaining someone because of how they look, not what they did. The red flag. Kenneth's entire chain of decisions, the stop, the demand for ID, the escalation, the handcuffing, was never triggered by a crime. It was triggered by a black woman in a wealthy neighborhood, and the conclusion his mind drew before he even got out of the car. The consequence. When enforcement is selective, it is not law. It is discrimination wearing a badge. She walked inside without looking back at him. The front door closed behind her and she stood for a moment in the hallway, in the quiet of her own house, letting the shift from outside to inside settle over her. Then she pulled off her gardening gloves, carefully, one finger at a time, and looked at her wrists. The right one bore a red ring where the metal had pressed into her skin above the glove line. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she went to the kitchen table where her laptop sat open from the morning. She pulled up her security camera system first. The footage was there, all of it. The wide-angle front camera had caught Kenneth's approach from the moment his boots hit the driveway. The grab, the porch steps, the handcuffs going on. 4 minutes and 37 seconds of everything she needed. She saved it to the hard drive. She emailed it to herself, to her attorney David Wren, and to Simone with a subject line that said only, "Keep this safe." Then she uploaded it to cloud storage in 2 separate accounts. Then she called David. Then she called a number she had carried in her phone for 15 years, the direct line of Atlanta's police chief. She told him what had happened in the same measured tone she used for everything. She did not embellish. She did not need to. commander was at her door within 2 hours. He sat across from her at the kitchen table, watched the footage on her laptop without speaking, and photographed the mark on her wrist before he left. By evening, the footage was in the hands of the Internal Affairs Division. By the following morning, it had reached a reporter at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. By Wednesday night, it had been viewed 12 million times. By Thursday morning, it was on every major network. The Internal Affairs investigation opened formally at 8 a.m. on Thursday. Kenneth Chapman had been on the job for 8 months, 1 week, and 4 days. If she didn't have security cameras and powerful connections, what happens to this story? Let us know in the comments. Jury checkpoint. What the officer claimed. This was an isolated incident by one officer acting alone. What the law requires. A 48-page investigation found a documented pattern. For prior complaints in 8 months, all involving Black and Latino residents, all dismissed without reviewing footage. This was not one bad day. This was a system looking the other way. You decide. Isolated incident or institutional failure? Let us know in the comments. Lieutenant Commander Phyllis Wren had a reputation in the Atlanta PD for being the investigator nobody wanted assigned to their case. Not because she was unfair, because she was thorough in a way that left nowhere to hide. She had been on the force for 28 years. She started with Kenneth's body camera footage. All of it. Every recorded hour of his 8 months on the force, watched in sequence, logged, and cross-referenced against his written reports and his complaint file. What she found was not a single catastrophic mistake. It was something quieter and, in its way, more troubling. It was a pattern still forming, for prior complaints in 8 months, each one filed by a Black or Latino resident, each one dismissed by Sergeant Briggs after a review of Kenneth's written account that did not include watching the footage. The first, a 16-year-old boy questioned for loitering outside his own apartment building on a Saturday afternoon. Kenneth's report described the teen as evasive and uncooperative. The body camera showed a confused kid asking politely why he was being stopped. The second, a Latina woman pulled over for a minor traffic infraction and then asked 3 separate times to prove she owned her vehicle. The third, a Black man followed on foot for 2 full blocks before being stopped for suspicious behavior. He had been walking home from a night shift at Grady Memorial Hospital. He was still in his scrubs. Each complaint had been reviewed in isolation. None had been connected to the others. No one had ever looked at all 4 together and asked the question that Phyllis Wren was now asking in the opening paragraph of what would become a 48-page report. Her conclusion, stated in the final paragraph without qualification, read, Officer Chapman's conduct on the morning of the incident was not an anomaly. It was the predictable outcome of 8 months of unchecked behavior, enabled by inadequate supervision and a failure of accountability at multiple levels of this department. Legal reality check, credential verification, and supervisory accountability. The rule, supervision of officers, especially in their first year, is not optional. Departments are legally obligated to monitor patterns of behavior. When a supervisor knowingly ignores a pattern of civil rights complaints, their inaction becomes institutional negligence. The city can be held liable for what its supervisors chose not to see. The red flag, Sergeant Briggs reviewed Kenneth's written reports and nothing else. For complaints, for dismissals, 0 footage reviewed. That is not oversight. That is a policy of willful blindness. The consequence, when a department fails to supervise, it doesn't just enable one officer. It signals to every officer that certain conduct has no consequences. That signal has a cost, and the public pays it. Is a supervisor who ignores complaint patterns as guilty as the officer? Kenneth Chapman was suspended without pay 71 hours after the incident, the fastest formal disciplinary action in Atlanta PD memory. His badge and service weapon were collected by Sergeant Briggs, who did not make eye contact during the process. Criminal charges followed within the week. The Fulton County District Attorney reviewed the evidence, body camera footage, Erica's security camera, for separate neighbor recordings, Phyllis Wren's 48-page report, and filed charges under Georgia and federal law: assault, unlawful detention, violation of civil rights, Kenneth was 24 years old and had been on the force for 8 months. He was arraigned on a Thursday morning and released on bond by afternoon. Erica's federal civil rights lawsuit named Kenneth personally and the city of Atlanta. Her attorney filed it 11 days after the incident. The city's legal team sat down with the evidence and understood immediately what they were looking at. A victim with 33 years of judicial service and unimpeachable public credibility. 4 camera angles capturing the same event. A pattern investigation that implicated not just the officer but the supervisory structure above him. There was no version of a trial that ended well for the city. They settled in 5 weeks, $750,000, and a reform mandate 12 years in duration. The reforms required a mandatory bias awareness training with annual certification, a quarterly body camera audits conducted by an independent civilian board, automatic escalation to the county prosecutor when any officer accumulated a 3rd complaint within 18 months, or a public-facing database of all use-of-force incidents, broken down by officer and by demographics, a complete restructuring of how rookie officers were supervised in their first year of service. At the press conference, Erica stood at the podium in a charcoal gray suit. The faint mark on her wrist had not entirely faded. She spoke without notes. "I spent 33 years administering justice. I believed in that work. And I was grabbed in my own garden by an officer who looked at my face and decided I didn't belong in my own home. I'm not here today for myself. I'm here for everyone who went through something like this and had no platform, no resources, and no cameras." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. 24 months. Permanently banned from law enforcement in Georgia. Was this verdict justice or just the beginning? Let us know in the comments. Jury checkpoint. What the officer claimed. The settlement was excessive. $750,000 is too much for a misunderstanding. What the law requires. There was no misunderstanding. There was a false arrest, an assault, a civil rights violation, a supervisory failure, and a pattern of unchecked conduct documented over 8 months. The law allows significant damages precisely to deter institutional negligence. You decide, was $750,000 and a 12-year reform mandate justice or not enough? Drop your verdicts in the comments. Kenneth Chapman was released after serving 17 months of his 24-month sentence. He walked out with a duffel bag, a record, and a name that had been searched on the internet 50 million times. He applied to 50 jobs in the year that followed. Some did not call back. Some called back, ran his name, and went quiet. He eventually relocated to Tennessee. He found work at a distribution warehouse outside Nashville. Overnight shift, no customer contact. He does not speak publicly about the incident. People who knew him in Marietta say he describes it, when he describes it at all, as a misunderstanding, a split-second judgment call that anyone could have made. He has repeated this often enough that it has taken on the quality of something rehearsed. But there are hours, alone at 3 in the morning, moving boxes through a warehouse, when the rehearsed version doesn't hold. He knows what he saw when he slowed that cruiser on Ardmore Lane. He knows what conclusion he drew from it. He knows it had nothing to do with anything Erica Pierce had done and everything to do with who he had decided, before he ever opened the car door, that she was. Erica Pierce still lives in the brick colonial on Ardmore Lane. She still tends her front garden through the Atlanta seasons, through the late frosts and the July heat and the long golden weeks of early fall. Every spring she plants petunias, soft pinks and deep violets, from the same nursery on Campbellton Road, pressed into the same garden bed along the front path. Simone still comes every Sunday. She still pauses on the front walk and says they're beautiful. Erica still doesn't tell her how much it means. The body camera footage is now shown in police academies across 38 states. It is used as a case study in assumption, escalation, and the institutional cost of leaving bias unexamined. In the 2 years following the settlement, Atlanta PD's use of force incidents dropped 29%. 15 officers with documented complaint patterns were placed under formal review. 6 were terminated. Erica testifies before state legislatures. She speaks at community forums. She has written about that morning in ways that have reached people she will never meet. She never wanted any of it. She wanted to finish planting her flowers before the Georgia heat arrived. But she shows up. She keeps showing up with patience, with purpose, and with her gloves on. You just witnessed 4 minutes and 37 seconds that cost one officer his career, one city $750,000, and one woman something she should never have had to fight for. But Erica Pierce was not the first. And the cases that didn't have cameras, didn't have connections, didn't have 33 years of judicial credibility behind them, those cases are in this archive. If you believe in accountability, if you believe that the law should apply equally to every person in every yard in every neighborhood in this country, if you believe that bearing witness is not passive, that watching, sharing, and understanding is how systems change, then subscribe and stay. The next case is already queued. The next verdict is already waiting. Drop your verdict below.